I am Naveen Senthilkumar, founder and CEO of Finvise.
I'm one of the founders of Vortyx AI.
My name is Hiro Kuwana. I'm the founder and CEO of FlyByrd.
I'm building a camera app that records your body motions, then uses that data to animate 3D avatars in augmented reality.
The product that we are creating is worse than Jira.
And you're going to put every product manager out of business.
My dog was smelling lots of smells.
We watched Elon Musk for 20 seconds drink water.
Do you even believe your own?
And she went to prison for insider trading, and you're giving some really good feedback, and then you have a calculator on your watch?
Super excited for this one. This is episode 4 of the Feedback Loop. It's a really, really fun one. I'm going to get to the guests we have on stage in a second. But for those of you who haven't been to the Feedback Loop, haven't heard of the Feedback Loop, the essence of it is that founders, no matter how good their idea, how good their product, how good their team, often get stuck on a very simple thing, which is the narrative, the storytelling, the essence of their pitch. All of that can still hold the best startups back. And so the Feedback Loop is really a feedback engine for startup founders in the early stage. And the great thing about it, so I'm Sherveen, I'm the CEO of Free Agency, Hollywood-style representation for tech talent. That's the only shilling I'll really do. And while I enjoy giving the feedback, the other part of this that I really enjoy is getting some check writing, venture investors, some smart, intelligent, awesome people next to me to join me in that feedback giving for the founders who are going to take the hot seat in a second here. And this week is a 2-for-1 special that I'm super excited about. Anthony Pompliano, Pomp, who is, in my estimation, one of the bigger narrative crafters of the past generation in tech, past phase of tech, if we want to kind of label it. Introduce yourself to the crowd, but in the perspective of all the things that you do, not just what they might know you for already from following you on Twitter.
Yeah, I apologize. I can't really look this way because my eyes are sensitive. The light keeps hitting me. So I'm not ignoring you guys. I've invested about 200 companies all across different sectors. Obviously, people probably know most about the crypto stuff. And then we also incubate a lot of companies internally as well. Everything from crypto-related things to real estate, finance, various other sectors.
Awesome. And we have Polina Pompliano, who do you do any Pomp-like acronym or nickname for yourself? No? Plan to? No? Okay. Tell the crowd about yourself. It's I think from not only what you have done historically in your career, but what I think will be really interesting too in terms of what you've been involved in, over the past few years with Anthony.
Yeah, so I started in journalism my whole life. I worked at Fortune magazine most recently for 5 or 6 years, and then I left in 2020 to become a founder and really started my media company, The Profile, in 2020, even though I had been doing it since 2017. It was official then. And I recently wrote a book called Hidden Genius.
Are you going to tell them about your investing track record?
I have a great investing track record.
Polina's told me about 4 different companies, and I said all of them were stupid, and they're all now worth $1 billion.
No, he's talking about, I found Robinhood Series A.
Okay.
That's and then,
yeah.
First of all, no, listen. I was a reporter, and they were like, this is too small to write about.
Oh.
So if I had money, yeah. So Robinhood, and also I was one of the very early users of Canva.
Another big
and
one.
also, remember Drunk Elephant? Wasn't that like $1 billion acquisition? Yeah. Okay. See.
I consider myself a startup.
Do
I don't
you
remember
want
Drunk Elephant. What was
to? It's
that?
like a cosmetic brand, which is why I thought it was dumb. then it was $1 billion company.
So let's dive in before we bring the founders on stage and get into the feedback loop. There's questions I want to ask both of you. Pauline, I want to start with you. So Hidden Genius. So you're in my reading of it, trying to distinguish between those business professionals, entertainers, athletes who are great from those who are truly exceptional. People should buy your book. But what nugget can you give us in terms of what that discovery was at the end of the day? Is there something that you think people fundamentally could take away and maybe even have it as an action item for themselves, especially the founders in the room?
Yeah, the one that's most pertinent, there's 2, but the main one is at some point in your life, you're going to like bet on yourself in a really big way that's really, really terrifying. So for me, my whole life, I was a writer. Like I never considered myself to be an entrepreneur that I could be. And then when I was talking to Anthony, I was like, should I leave my job to like work on a Substack newsletter full time? And as far as I know, I was the first reporter to leave their like legacy media job to work on a newsletter full time. So I had nobody to talk to. So I was like, this seems insane. But everything I was reading was like the passion economy is on the rise, you know, the independent creator. I was like, this is the moment. And so, you know, I was like, should I do it? Should I not? Should I do it? Should I not? I call it the seesaw of misery. And eventually he made me do like a pro and con list of why I wouldn't do it. And I had my like risks, and it was like, we're at the tail end of a 10-year cycle. Usually there's a recession. We're at the tail end. And then what I didn't realize was that 2 weeks later, COVID would hit. And that was not on my list. Yeah. But it worked out. And then the other thing is, like the most exceptional people, the people who have like really reached some level of success, real level of success, they know that like they can always reinvent themselves. So even if they like fail miserably and fall flat on their face, a la like Martha Stewart, whose mugshot was on magazine covers and she went to prison for insider trading. She still recovered because she is smart and she's very, very good at what she does. And she's reinvented so much and so well that she stayed relevant from my grandmother's generation to my mother's generation to my generation.
It's like two versions of resilience.
And she knows Snoop Dogg.
And she had a thirst trap on Instagram.
I mean, both of those things are just like resilience in different forms, which is like, you know, I think about a lot of the founders that are going through this moment in the market where startups have like, you know, taken big left turns. Who seems to be thriving and who probably will we look back on in this era and see thriving is people who, you know, kind of demonstrate those traits. Yeah. Super interesting. All right, Pom, my question for you. So, those who know both of us, maybe not in this room, but in general, would know that I'm probably the biggest Web3 skeptic. Pomp, obviously known for a lot of the crypto story over the past many years. I have to respect the narrative building of like what you were able to accomplish in terms of, and you're continuing to accomplish in terms of talking about a story that not everyone understands, then not everyone agrees with, then changes every month. You know, from that perspective, if you're talking to a founder who wants to similarly create a little bit of a movement and craft a narrative, I mean, it is just the industry in some ways has a tremendous amount to thank you for in that perspective. What is a distillation you can give to a startup founder on narrative building?
I don't think most founders actually believe what they're saying.
Ooh, I love that.
So I call it like a blog post founder, right? If you just read a blog post and you were like, oh, I'm supposed to say this in the meeting, it actually makes investing harder because there used to be a pattern recognition. Like if a founder said certain things or acted in a certain way or, you know, followed certain, the way that they followed up after a meeting or whatever, like you just could pick up these patterns. But then YC did a good job on one hand of like basically putting it all out there and telling people like, hey, here's what the best founders do. But the founders who aren't the best founders, then like, you know, they're smart, right? They just read the blog post like, okay, well, I'm supposed to, after the meeting, do this thing. And so it kind of muddied the signal a little bit. And so there was a period where I think a lot of investors were like, wait a minute, you like are doing all the right things, but like the company isn't like, what's the, you know, difference here? So this like blog post founder kind of emerged. And so a lot of times I'll just spend time with founders and just be like, basically like, do you even believe your own bullshit? Right. And like in the beginning, if you're selling a dream, like it is kind of a bullshit and it is kind of a dream. Right. And so if you think of the Bitcoin and crypto thing, like not only did I really believe, but like I was willing to bet an immense amount of.
He believed.
Not only was I willing to bet an immense amount of money, but also my reputation, right? And so like there's a lot of people, I mean, I have messages going back to 2016, 2017, people that I'd known for a long time. You know, I'd already worked at Facebook. I was pretty well known in Silicon Valley in terms of doing investing and stuff. And people were like, what are you doing? Right. Like you are taking the hard left. Like this is insane. Like stop talking about this stuff, right? And I remember specifically one meeting, myself and a guy, Mark Yusko, who I had partnered with, he took me to go meet a couple of like these legends of Wall Street that he knew. I don't want to say who it is, but there's somebody who's still active today who's very well known. And I was like, a little boy excited to like go to Disney World, right? I mean, this was like awesome. I don't think I slept the night before. And we went and saw one of them. It was really cool. He was super curious, was like, hey, I don't know if I'm ready to like invest, but like it was obvious he cared. And then we went and saw another one. And this guy spent it was a 12-minute meeting. And it basically was 11 minutes of pleasantries of like, hey, how are your kids? You know, whatever. And like, oh, there's another human in the room. Like, what do you want? And I started talking. And he was like, okay, that's cute. Like, why don't you just leave the materials and like, we'll look at it later. And when we left, I remember Mark was like, I would say frustrated, but also like a little disappointed because this was somebody he respected, he spent a lot of time working with, stuff like that. And it dawned on me. I was like, that's the opportunity. This guy has hundreds of billions of dollars that he could invest right now. And he literally thinks that this is stupid. If it ends up being right, like that's where all the, you know, kind of returns are. But it was easier for me to say, because like, I mean, I knew who the guy was, but like, I didn't have a personal relationship. I wasn't offended by him, you know, like whatever.
Well, it's interesting because you point to the belief thing, and you know, I'm reminded of like the academic or the professional founder that you're talking about, the blog post founder. A lot of these individuals, they're playing at it versus feeling it in everything they say, and it requires putting your reputation out there. Someone you brought to this office a couple weeks ago comes to mind, Augustus Rainmaker, where like the storytelling is at the core of everything he does, and you can tell it probably infuses in recruiting, in sales, and when he sends an email for customer support, you can probably feel the mission, versus others where like the mission is the thing they then like use to form a sentence. It's like the fuel they need, but it's not necessarily the essence of what they do. But it's hard, I guess, you know, in that case, we just have less founders, and maybe we should have less founders, but like that's the reality because people believe far less than they just like come up with capitalism.
Well, part of it is believing, and then the other part of it is most people don't have the courage to upset others or repel people. So a lot of times when I talk to founders, usually I wait till after we've invested so that then we can not get confused by the signal. I tell them, I said, like, point to the group that's upset or like pissed off at you. And people are like, why would I want to piss people off? It's like, well, you're not doing anything noteworthy unless there's somebody who's upset. So, you know, we've invested in some companies that people are like, that sounds insane. And I'm like, perfect. Like, we're taking big enough swings. And so when I think through that, it's not all companies. Like a small business down the street, like a restaurant, shouldn't be trying to piss people off, right? Like it's a different thing. But in tech companies specifically, if you aren't telling a story that is so kind of clear that people get offended, then you got to go back to the drawing board. And so if you kind of apply that over and over again, I mean, Airbnb was like, you're going to sleep in my kitchen. People are like, that's illegal.
Right. The disbelief was
Right.
almost as extreme as the belief, right? The belief, you know, in Brian and his team's case, it was like, we're going to get people to sleep in the, you know, on each other's couches. And then people who didn't believe said, it's ridiculous that you think I would want to sleep on someone's couch or that I would let someone in my home. And so that's actually interesting.
It's like the best companies, they're not incremental like improvements, they're radical changes.
Right.
And so, you know, in regulated industries like hospitality or taxis or Bitcoin, there's a lot of like, hey, where does this fall on like the regulatory timeline? And so, you know, back in 2016, 2017, people were like, I think Bitcoin's illegal. Right. Like, I think criminals use that. It's like, well, check the dollar. But
Only my dad thought that.
yeah, that first time I met her dad, that was he was like, so what's this thing?
That must be a fun thing to explain.
Story.
Well, speaking of, you know, kind of not being afraid to repel people, I'm excited to give feedback to founders today. So let me talk about how it works. You know, for everybody who hasn't watched or been to one of these yet, the founders are going to come up and they're going to pitch 1 minute at a time. I'm going to cut them off in a minute. And then the three of us will give them feedback, ask questions, distill the essence of their pitch, and hopefully give them something to kind of constructively work from moving forward. All right. Well, with that, let's bring up our first founder to the Feedback Loop episode 4. Woo!
Oh, hey.
Hey, how you doing?
Good. How are
Hi.
you?
I'm doing amazing.
What is your name?
My name is Hiro Kuwana. I'm the founder and CEO of FlyByrd.
All right. Before we get into it,
Wait, flatbird?
Oh, FlyByrd, like
Fly-
a bird that flies. I know, it's a B2B SaaS company. Super
we'll get to it.
original.
Yeah. So before we get started, are you ready to give your pitch, your 1 minute pitch?
Yeah, of
Are you
course.
open
I'm
to
down
feedback?
whenever. Yeah.
Awesome.
Open to every feedback you can imagine.
I've met Hiro before. I've given him feedback, and I can tell you he is absolutely open to feedback. I'm interested to see how you incorporated the feedback I've given you in the past. So with that in mind, with that higher bar set, you have a minute. Hiro, tell us, what are you building?
Sounds good. So what we're building is a product decision platform that takes all feedback or all customer feedback into one area. So one thing I've realized, especially my co-founder, he was at Google. He had a lot of quantitative data. I was working on a business in Japan, and there was a lot of video I had to go through that I didn't have enough time. And if I did have enough time, I'd watch it on 2.5 to 3 times speed, which just wasn't unacceptable because you miss things. So what we wanted to do was, AI and speech recognition is getting so amazing. So you combine that with a lot of textual analysis, and we are in the mindset of it's going to get better and better and better, but we want to make sure that it's kind of fuzzy logic. We want to be able to be like the person who's, okay, use this person, Abigail said that the product that we are creating is worse than Jira. So it's like you want to mark that, and then you want to put that exact location she says that into an
5
insight.
seconds.
And that's exactly what we're building.
All right. Well done. So let's distill for the crowd a little bit, because we didn't hear as much, and this will be a mixture of pitch feedback and a question of the what. If someone's using the product, what does it look like? What does it feel like?
It honestly feels, what we wanted to do is, I hate B2B SaaS software. So I want to make it like Google Drive, where you just literally drag and drop everything. So all you do is audio, text, notes, you just drag and drop it right into the main dashboard. And then kind of like a cake, you just pretty much have your lunch. And then by the end of it, hundreds of gigabytes of files would just be insights all analyzed.
And what sorts of insights are we talking about?
Oh, so actually, it's kind of funny since right now our core customers are product managers. So we essentially interview them and we record it, and then we actually put it back into our thing. But if you are a UX researcher, if you are a product manager who has a lot of qualitative data, maybe through user interview or dovetails, if you're in the industry, you probably heard of these. But it's like you would use all of these to pretty much just collect the insights and find the exact places you need it for.
What do we think?
This is cool. It reminds me, I was recently buying something on Amazon and it had 10,000 reviews. And I usually just read 1 or 2, but now I notice that Amazon does most reviewers say that this is a soft blanket, but not a high quality blanket. And they complain about this or whatever. So is it like that, but for product managers, it distills all this stuff into a paragraph?
So that's actually a super good point, because it's we want to be that as a part of it, which is you do have the Google reviews part, but you also have the part where if you're having a one-on-one interview and you have that recorded, it's also included. So yes, and we want, and more is kind of what we want to try to do.
It's a great analogy.
Yeah.
How long have you been working on it?
So we were working on it since February 20th, and then 10 days later we have the product, and then 10 days after that the MVP. So we've been working on the alpha, I would say, for the last 2 months, iterating.
And why are you still working on it? What are the signs that it's working?
Oh, yeah. So that's a great question. We actually started because two people were willing to, a product manager and a consultant were willing to prepay to start it. And then it's once we have the MVP, we just iterated based on the product manager because we're consultants, they're very specific needs, so we couldn't really cater to them. So after that, we got 2 other people to just use our alpha, which I'm surprised by because it's still buggy. I'm happy to show it, but they still find value out of it because of it's they upload the videos and find the insights. So one person works at a Series A startup, the other one works at TripAdvisor for UX research.
Why are you the right person to build it?
That's a great question. Why me, right? I mean, seriously, I'm just a dude who just it's funny because Sherveen asked me, don't get me wrong, how old are you? And I'm I love it because I get it. And the thing is, it's I know you worked in product management before. There is one part, which is my co-founder had the exact problem, the same problem, or similar problem, more on the technical side, which is at Google, a lot of customer feedback. And I had it when I was running more of my, travel business, which is reserving a lot of things in Japan. And I just wanted to find that unique moment that made them say, wow, rather than, oh, that's kind of nice. It's that's just another castle and a temple. I want to be make it have an wow experience that just makes them refer other people. So.
And then if it fails, what's the most likely reason?
If it fails, I would say too early. Because what the product I'm trying to create, actually Sherveen kind of helped me go through with this a little bit, was it's what we're trying to do is we don't really care who wins in the AI race. We're kind of this layer between product development and also the AI itself. So it's whoever, AI can't have too much data or can't hold millions of data, but your company has to. So how do we do that? Which is you have one interface which takes in that part, also integrates Jira, Zendesk, or different types of customer videos you have all into one place, and then it's able to have it so that all the unstructured data is structured. And what I mean by it's too early is because the actual demand isn't built yet right now. It's going to be there in 10 years from now, which is when you have so many different feedbacks, it's you can create insights that you would have never imagined. And that's the kind of thing that we want to do.
So I'll re-synthesize some of my past feedback and say that I think it still applies. I want to hear more of that vision of the future versus some of the smaller things that happen. I want to hear about the smaller things, right? But it's kind of like when you first shared this with me, I thought about, hey, what's the product manager of the future going to look like? And how can FlyByrd be part of that future product manager's toolkit? But your pitch is going to have a tension because people want to see, and I even asked that question of what does it look like? What does it feel like? But also, because it's such a practical product in some ways, because there are comparisons to user interview or other product feedback platforms, you want to still make sure you're giving enough of the, hey, if this goes well, right? It's the opposite of the does it fail question. What does the future look like, and why has FlyByrd transformed that future a little bit? So when you're thinking about how to recraft that pitch, think more about that future product manager or all the other people who might use it, and how do you craft a narrative around you bringing that future faster?
I love it.
Awesome. Well done, Hiro.
I love it.
Thank you.
The way that I would describe your business, if you really want to draw a big vision, is just the first AI product manager, and you're going to put every product manager out of business.
And you repel the curve.
Yeah, that's definitely good feedback. I did think about the pitching as more of it's the replacing the product manager, the current one. I guess part of me is also the Luddite was I don't like replacing. I'm I want to lift everyone up if ideally as possible.
That's not how the world works. Technology replaces people's jobs and they go get new jobs.
That's
right?
true.
So don't craft a narrative because it makes you feel good. Craft a narrative that tells the truth about the future.
Fair enough.
Awesome.
Appreciate it.
I think the interesting thing for me is I do think there are all these future careers that these early AI products are kind of hinting at. And I think all of them should be more honest about whether they're replacing or not. But hey, we actually think this job is going to change. And our product is actually V.1 of that change. And there's just so many really great design tools, product tools, engineering tools right now that are maybe not giving enough of that, hey, this is just part one, but we're going to go really far soon.
It's like when I first started using Canva.
Mm-hmm.
And one more thing about I think your feedback about the vision is so important just for any founder. I'm working on this piece about really practical takeaways we can learn from the world's greatest public speakers, because I need to get better at public speaking. And one of the speakers that I was I have such a hard time with him is Elon Musk. If you've ever watched a presentation, he is objectively horrible. He stares at the floor. An AI analyzed a 5-minute speech that he did, and he said 20 times in 5 minutes. And so people are he uses filler language. One time he was in the middle of a sentence. He said, hold on, guys, I need to take a sip of water. And we watched Elon Musk for 20 seconds drink water and then continue as if nothing had happened. So people are why do we listen to every single word? And the answer is because he builds this vision that we want to be part of. It's a chip in your brain, humans on Mars, self-driving cars, all this stuff. So it's if you can make the vision big, you take everybody along with you, even if you suck as a speaker.
I love that. It's if you're dripping with vision, it'll excuse a lot of the other flaws. Yeah, and if it's sharp enough, right? Combining both of those pieces of feedback, it's offend somebody and be so clear about it, and it'll help you tell that story. Awesome. Founder number 2, welcome to the stage. Let's bring him up.
Hello.
What's your name?
My name's Andrew MacDowell. My company is Pincast.
Andrew, are you ready to give your pitch? Are you ready to receive some feedback?
I'll be ready in just a moment.
Okay, take your moment.
I'm ready.
Awesome. Andrew, tell us, you have a minute. What are you building?
Pincast is a location-based social audio app. That means that you can use Pincast to record audio, pin it to a specific location in the real world, and other people who want to listen to it need to go to that spot. Once you have that mechanic in place, you can build all kinds of new experiences. You can, of course, create interactive audio tours. You can create scavenger hunts. You can create premium content that's built out of existing IP. Think, for example, of Jay-Z taking his autobiography and taking you through Brooklyn to each of the stops that he experienced throughout his career. Also, perhaps giving you demo tracks that are available nowhere else. So there are lots of different business opportunities that evolve as a result of this ecosystem scaling. And it's something that I have built a prototype for, and it's going to be so much fun to build it.
All right, under a minute. Good job.
Thank you.
How did you get this idea?
I was walking my dog. My dog was having a better time of the walk than I was. And that was because my dog was smelling lots of smells.
Oh.
Getting signals about what other dogs in the area were doing. And I was running a digital audio company at the time, and I thought, humans can do this with sound. So that's
There's a
actually where I
tagline
began.
there that I think is awesome about the comparison to dogs. I have a curiosity around the past attempts in this space.
Yes.
Because I think there have been, I don't know how many have been like in this moment where I think the technology is really there on the mobile front, but there have been attempts, right? What have you learned from prior goes at this?
I think it's very important to acknowledge that the technology is actually not the interesting part of this idea. What is important and what is a core part of the product is the way in which it's launched, is the network effect. Without the network effect, without a good launch, without going about it the right way, this is not a product worth using.
So how are you going to launch it?
We're going to launch it. I think that if you look, basically, other companies that have tried to do this, if you compare it to the creation of baseball, what they've done is they've carved the first bat, written out the rules, mapped out a baseball field, and hoped that people would show up and know what to do. Hope that they would pick up the book, right? But what we need to do is we actually need to stage the first baseball game. So we're going to do something that is drawn heavily from Andrew Chen's book, The Cold Start Problem. We're going to start small. We're going to use the geographic limitations that apply to this system. And we're going to, I've picked an 8x8 square block zone in Bushwick, Brooklyn. I think the demographics there are perfect. It's a great mix of residential and event venues and so on. And we're going to flood the zone before we ever make the app available to anybody outside of the team with amazing content. I've gotten to know audio producers in New York City very well. I've got them ready to go. They're excited to use the mechanics of this new ecosystem. We're going to run a small contest. We're going to turn our content producers into the people that are marketing this for us. And it's just going to be fun. For the people in this area, it's going to feel like a magical festival that's just sort of seeping through the floorboards and will gradually rise to their consciousness.
Everything that you've mentioned is like the technology and the business and the commercial pieces. Why do users want this?
I think users want this because there will be a variety of things that pull them in. There's an opportunity not just to produce public content for everybody who uses it, but there is also an opportunity to produce private content. I can create a small tour that maps my recollections of the first date that I took with my wife in the Union Square area. And I can create that for her. And then she'll receive a message, and maybe I do it right before I go on a trip. And then she can take that tour and stop off at each of those spots.
Isn't that lonely?
I think it's a unique experience. I don't think it's meant to be something that you do all of the time.
I'm married. If I did that, she'd be like, "Oh, thanks for the reminder that you're not here."
Yeah, there were some comically bad elements to our first date that will serve as comic fodder.
Just really quick, can you share your background? Because you have a radio voice. What did you do before this?
Well, I ran a digital audio company called Offscript Health. This is a company that I started with a patient advocate after my son had a major health crisis that has a very happy ending, I'm happy to say. But there was a need to produce content for patients and caregivers that makes healthcare more understandable. The company was called Offscript Health. And so that was a digital audio company. We engaged hundreds of audio producers. We produced over 1,400 episodes of podcasts and other types of digital audio content. And I got to know the space very well. Despite the nice thing you said about my voice, I was not a host. I was not a performer.
One of the things that I'd say about the pitch, everything is actually the problem you described, which is the go-to-market, right? Like everything about anyone who's an audio
That's right.
on mobile. And it's not enough, actually, of your story. And what I mean by that is, even in your answer to that question,
Right.
I'm not hearing something super easy for me to feel confident in. Now, you probably can take that Bushwick zone and tell a much clearer version of that of, hey, we think it's about flooding the zone and it's about making sure when someone enters that area and they, I don't know if you were going to post a sign to get them to install the app for the first time or what you might do.
I have 8 interns waiting in the wings.
To just be there.
To be there. There will be
Install
covert
the app.
operations and overt operations.
But these are the questions I then develop, right?
Yes.
Which is you might say, that's how I'm going to get phase 1. But then how do you do phase 2? How do you get the next 1,000 users and the next 10,000 after that? Because you can't do the things that don't scale. And your idea, the things preventing it from being big, are all of those things, right? Like,
That's
unlike
right.
another concept where it's like, oh, there's virality to it once someone signs up. We don't have the similar effect here, right? There's a sense of literally geographic locality. And so if I'm an investor, if I'm someone, critically thinking about this pitch, I want that to be part of your initial story. Is like, here's what we're doing, here's why it's great, and here's all the details as how we're going to really solve the go-to-market.
Yep.
And if we do that, if you believe in our go-to-market plan, then you're going to love everything else already. It's kind of like easy to understand.
Yeah, that's really good feedback. And I think that it's also the area that I get most excited about. I also find myself running off at the mouth to too great a degree. And so I think I pulled back on it in order to come in well within the 1-minute window.
Well, it's a really interesting product. Oh, any more feedback before we go?
I was just going to say, I do think audio is having a moment with, what is that company?
AirChat.
AirChat. And also like there's another audio company that recently launched that I think is really interesting. So I think you're in the right moment.
I've just started listening to the audiobook of your book, and it's really terrific, by the way. It's
Hear
called
me
Good
mispronounce
Genius.
words.
Good pitch, man.
What a pitch. What a pitch.
Take all of my money.
This is not BS. But seriously, it's like a 48 Laws of Power without the Machiavellian element.
Very nice.
It's a good book. I'm serious.
Good job, Adrian.
Okay, thanks.
AirChat, super interesting to bring up. Do either of you use it?
So,
I'm an investor, so I will say.
Oh, okay, so you're going to sit out on this one, okay.
I never realized how little I have to say until I started using AirChat.
I like it because it forces you to be crystal clear in the words you use because you hear it back. And my guess is that more than people want to admit, they listen to what they said. Like they keep re-listening. So there's a bunch of studies that show when you post on Instagram, people will then go check it like 100 times in an hour because they want to see how many likes it got. Well, who are the comments? They want to look at themselves for the 15th time in their photo or whatever. And so imagine that with like a more intimate, how did I sound?
Right.
And then there's this weird biological thing where you don't actually, nobody likes how they sound when they hear that played back.
Oh, I love it.
Do you like hearing him listening to himself on AirChat?
Oh my God, I hate it.
No, she hates when I play anything out loud.
But there is something to like, is there a company, has somebody built a business on like group voice note chats?
It's called a telephone.
Well, that's the thing, right? I think like Clubhouse was the first failure. AirChat, all due respect to your friends Naval and Brian, I think they're UX product-wise. So those who don't have this on their phone, it had a weekend of Clubhouse-style popularity. I was on there for about a weekend. And it's kind of like if you combine Twitter's feed with voice notes. And it's elegant in a lot of ways in what it's trying to do. And I really love what you're talking about, which is like people hear themselves. And so like for the first time, maybe they're learning how to public speak. The challenge with all the audio ones, though, I think is like it is way harder of a interaction mechanism than we actually give it credit for to listen, to speak, because no one's doing that with video for obvious reasons. It's even harder. But I don't think it has a Twitter-like, let me use my thumbs, but I'm at dinner.
But it changes the type of content. It's really hard to have vile or like trollish type content because you hear someone's voice and then you have to speak it out loud. It's way easier to fire off some stupid comment like in text, under the table at dinner than it is to like have to think for a second, speak, hear it played back, hit post, and then know whenever that person responds, you're going to hear their voice.
Totally.
So it like changes the type of content. And I don't want to speak for them, but I actually think that it's interesting that it can't go viral. Right. Like this whole element of where does value accrue moving forward? There will always be content that wants like the biggest audience, but actually the highest value content is stuck in group chats.
Right.
And so the audio version of that, it isn't meant to like quote unquote go viral. It's just like, can you reach the 10 people that you respect the most and have a conversation back and forth? It's just having like an asymmetric conversation with your smartest friends. It has like a different use case, which means it violates all the metrics that people would normally use to like gauge, is it successful?
Which is good because Naval doesn't, I don't think, care about whether or not that thing becomes popular. He cares that people who want that kind of like group audio experience care about it. Because I do agree with that concept of there is something trapped in group chats and maybe there's something to air chat. All right, next founder up.
Hi, folks. My name is Samiah Fatimah. Pleasure to be
I saw
here.
you on Twitter.
Yep.
Glad to have you. Are you feeling ready to pitch and receive some feedback?
Yes, I am.
Well, you have a minute. Tell us, what are you building?
So I'm one of the founders of Vortyx AI. And what we're doing is essentially we're building the equivalent of what is Compass for M&A sell-side advisors. I currently serve as a M&A advisor for a sell-side lower mid-market firm here in the city. And one of the problems I've noticed, among many others, is that advisors spend 50% of their time sourcing new leads, in addition to anywhere from $2,000 to $5,000 a month out of their own pockets and out of their own dime to find those leads. Most of the time, it doesn't convert into new deals, and that's one of the main problems. With Vortyx, what we're trying to do is trying to attain a lead on getting pre-market data from various sources and converting those leads into actual deals for those advisors. Essentially, that's what it is. We're implementing some tech into that and allowing advisors to close on as many deals as possible.
And that's a minute. Good job. What do we think?
Why can you automate the deal flow process? Like, isn't the whole pitch of advisors that they have proprietary deal flow?
So right now, advisors use basically referral networks. And those referral networks are with attorneys, lawyers at various funds, as well as private equity firms within their particular domains in order to get those deals. A lot of it is like on the ground networking and hustle, as well as shelling out money for various sources. And there can be overlap within the sources, like getting information from Source Scrub versus Grada versus something else, and then something else. And all of a sudden you have all these subscriptions and they're not really converting into any leads.
So basically you're creating an algorithm to do that better, but the referral network is an algorithm that's been fine-tuned for decades, right? So like the lawyer who sends the deal, he has an algorithm. He has an intuition as to, I think this is a good deal, I think it's a bad deal, I think you should see this deal, etc. So how do you build a better algorithm than the referral network?
We're implementing all of that into one. So that's going to be part of that. One of it is actually getting information that's already on the market. And the second one is getting information from the networks by implementing and getting those networks onboarded into our data.
I think the thing that maybe this is pitch feedback and a question, the how here, especially since you have such a good analogy with Compass, but you need to lean on it more.
Yep.
So, part of his question and part of your answer seems to be, correct me if I'm wrong, he's going, hey, there's this person who is already brokering this information or using this information, and how are you going to be better than them? The Compass version of this answer is there are all these agents who have, all of these listings. We're going to have a great way for them to aggregate the things they already have, but to also refer to other agents. And then to the user, we're going to have like a front page, and that front page is going to allow all these agents to get a benefit. And you probably have all of these sorts of answers baked into your solution of when they onboard, they're going to upload their referral data that they already have, their CRM data. Here's the data we add on top. Here's how they're going to then consume better information. But you're leaving that out. I think you're leaving that out because it's harder to tell that detailed story. But I actually think it's essential in your case. And you can use that Compass analogy, right? You can say, the way Compass did it originally is they went to all the brokers in New York and they said, all of you uploading your data is going to be good for all the rest of you. And then, there's a bunch of other effects. But my recommendation, but also, it is a question at the end of this, is to lean into that. Is that accurate in terms of what the product is? Like, am I broadly in the right region?
That is part of the product. So right now what happens is when I source on the ground referral networks, all of that information has to go from the cards and all these catalogs that we're getting, as well as like maybe somebody sending a deal through a lawyer or a PE shop. That has to get updated. Each one of those points is a new data point that gets updated into the database. But that may be different for each individual person. And now let's say you have a couple hundred advisors. Where is all that information? It's not all synced in. Everybody has their own process. So that is one part of it. Where like the CRM tools and the warehousing tools for where that information goes has to get synced in. That's one part. And then the other part is obviously besides the referral networks, the information that we ourselves are sourcing, which may be different from what the advisors, kind of like our own MLS system for that information.
On a scale of 1 to 100, what's your confidence level that it's going to work?
95.
Why do you still have your job then?
Well, I'm also commission-based. So technically everything I'm doing right now is for what I'm doing. Yeah.
Also, yeah,
this is just
a little feedback on the pitch. Because you're the perfect person to do this because of your background, I would start it with something like, let me tell you about how I spend my time on a daily basis, and just like go through that and be like, this is the wasted time and here's how my solution's gonna.
Especially because I actually don't know much about professionals in the space.
Yeah.
So I'm piecing together little hints from what you're talking about. But if you give me that information, a lot of the way I tell this.
Brochures, I would have never,
Yeah. And it surprised me too. I'm somewhat delighted by learning about the job while you're talking about your product. But the way I tell it to people all the time, give the other person enough context to be dangerous at understanding your solution. So if you give me context as to the role and what's hard about the role, then I'm going to be with you already by the time you're describing what you do. But if you don't give me that context, I have to work backwards, which is much harder. Feedback. Great job.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Compass for X sorts of businesses are really interesting.
Yeah.
Did Compass work?
Ooh, did Compass work? I don't
Does
know that I
anybody
know.
know?
Does anyone in the crowd know?
Does anybody know if Compass is successful?
Yeah,
It's public, right?
It is.
There's a lot of
objectively
companies that are
successful.
public.
I mean, I think the thing that Compass definitely did is change the way that having talked to people who use the product, think about sharing listings and like, do I have most of my value in the things that I keep to myself, or is it better for me to list online? So they definitely changed, and then you can argue whether the startup is successful, but I think they changed how brokers feel, agents feel about their properties and like either coveting them or thinking about a network. So from that perspective, but as a business, I have no idea. Well,
I don't know either.
We'll never know.
I interviewed the founder once, but he was eating a salad the whole time, so I was.
Oh, is that a bad sign?
I don't know. It was weird.
Does that distinguish
Sorry,
great
I just
from...
realized this is live stream.
All right, let's bring up our next founder. What is your name?
Naveen Senthilkumar.
Naveen, are you ready to give your pitch and receive some feedback?
I am.
You have a minute to tell us, what are you building?
I am Naveen Senthilkumar, founder and CEO of Finvise. $388 billion. That's how much money American consumers left on the table last year due to lack of financial guidance. Access to financial guidance is only taken advantage of by 11% of Americans, even though 80% of people say they want access. So there's this huge gap here. It's cost, it's expensive, it's inaccessible because it's like human to human, you gotta schedule it. And it kind of sucks. Like you don't trust them. So at Finvise, we're using GPT to build an AI assistant to expand access and affordability to financial advisory services. We provide financial planning and active investment management to make Americans more successful, to reach their short, medium, and long-term goals. Yeah. So we're raising $1 million pre-seed to build our product and get early users. And we're initially distributing private label and also through AI assistants.
All right, that's just about a minute. Good job.
Thanks.
Immediate question of, is this robo-advising on a different level? Is this Wealthfront, Betterment?
Yeah, but with those, you get like one account, right? But you're not going to buy a house in 2 years, 100% in equities. It's too much risk. So we create a target date fund for each goal you have throughout the life cycle of a person. So a car, a house, college.
Did I miss this part of it? This is going to be pitch feedback in a second. Did either of you understand this goal portion of the product? I think this wasn't part of the pitch. So I was kind of tuned into this overall Betterment Wealthfront using, kind of modern generative AI. So that's something to think about.
Is there like a regulatory risk of some kind here?
So we will have to be an RIA, but in the same way that Acorns is. So we'll provide you with like a total bond and a total equity blend.
I don't trust GPT to ask it where to go for directions or for a recipe. Like the thing hallucinates all the time. So how am I going to trust it to invest my money?
That's because GPT in a vacuum doesn't know anything about you. So what we're really building is the infrastructure that connects the interaction layer with GPT with your financial data, with your bank, and with your specific circumstances and preferences. So we actually connect the like model to your data to provide you with specific recommendations, kind of like Perplexity.
But if you do that, then how does it know, let's say I ask a question of an unknown, how does it know where to reference that from?
That's the genius of myself and my co-founder and our 7 years of combined experience building AI models. So we integrate all of that modeling in the back end so that GPT can interact and access those functions.
Do you think that there's like a trust problem with it? Because, opening up my financial history, knowing that there's like Chat GPT, I don't know. I don't know if
Yeah, it's a great question. 61% of Americans in total feel comfortable, but that number becomes 81 and 83% for Gen Z and millennials who we're targeting first. And second, we're always going to be in the loop. We won't act without your consent, so we'll have a human in the loop, especially as we're getting comfort. So, hey, do you, based on your situation, we think we identified this opportunity. Do you want to go ahead with that? Thumbs up, thumbs down.
Can I give you very honest feedback? I like you as a person. I think the pitch needs a tremendous amount of work. I'll give you 3 main things that bug me about it. The first is, I know you both did it, but like I distrust AI pitches that refer to GPT. Because what is GPT, right? There's GPT-4, there's OpenAI's models, there's using generative AI generally. I think if you're going to pitch in your expertise, you've said you've been building these models, you have to be accurate. You have to be accurate in your words because then someone else is going to go, wait, why did this kind of sound weird to me? Second thing that I think is really big here is I immediately went to Wealthfront and Betterment. Now, in hearing your pitch, there are differences, but that has to be part of your pitch. When you're in an area where 2 businesses have essentially failed recently, all intents and purposes, I think both those businesses failed, preface that as part of your story. Like, unlike Wealthfront and Betterment, here's what we're doing instead. Or here's the technology we're taking advantage of to do something very different instead. That has to be part of it because otherwise, all I'm hearing is those 2 products, but with generative AI instead. You have to make sure you're addressing it. And the third, the third thing there that I think is just really important, and this is like an overall, when you're talking about the UX of one of these products, you have to differentiate between the moment you're advising, the moment you're showcasing a visualization, the moment you're making decisions or helping make decisions, because that's what someone who's in fintech very deeply is going to care about as an investor. Oh, how are you going to help this user make money? Do you help them make money? Do your suggestions cause them to lose money? Right? So like, I want to understand as an investor, are you just a visualization platform? Are you Copilot? Copilot Money, I think is an app, or like Mint, whatever. Or are you a Betterment or Wealthfront where I might win or lose money, or a financial advisor? And I think being very explicit about that is super important. So just keep those things in mind because I think that makes you much more appealing to someone in your vertical.
I love going at financial advisors. Just say you want to put them out of business with software.
There you go.
Right?
Yeah.
Like that's what you're trying to do. If you're successful, you're going to put them all out of business. Some of them are good. Most of them aren't. They literally use a broken Excel model to make investment decisions. So like, just create better software and remove the human. So don't play the game of like, oh, there's a human, there's whatever. It's like, just go jump in the deep end. We're going to build the world's first artificial intelligence registered investment advisor, and we're going to use software to replace humans who couldn't get a job in many cases at like the best investment banks.
And just one more thing. You always say this, and I think it applies here, but applies everywhere. Like, remember when people kept pitching you blockchain companies or like this on the blockchain? And it's like, instead of saying this using Chat GPT or AI or whatever, it's like, say what it does, and that's just like the underlying thing.
Gotcha.
Yeah, there's actually, this is such a great point. VC John Frankel once said it as like, AI is just electricity. But like if you're building a startup and like part of your startup had electricity, you would be like, it uses electricity. You would say in building these models, here's my expertise. You owned that really well at one point, by the way. I love the confidence of being like the genius of me and my co-founder. That was such a great moment. Triple down, and kind of like deciding to craft your specific story, even though you're trying to tie it to an overall trend right now in the industry.
I always think about when you're doing a pitch, like write the New York Times headline, right? And if you're like, oh, we're going to like use models to like give people advice, everyone's like, yeah, whatever, like turn the page. But if you're like, we're going to build the world's first AI RIA, and we're going to put all the financial advisors that literally sentiment is horrible for them by the consumer and NPS is really low, like that's front page. And then, by the way, they're all going to attack you and then thank them because they made you go viral, right?
Yeah. All right. Good job.
Thank you all.
This is so fun.
Isn't it? I love...
Wait till we ask you to pitch.
I love the early stage moment because I also feel like a lot of people are still discovering kind of like what they're building in this kind of pre-seed to, let's call it pre-series A moment. There's still a lot that can change in terms of what you say and how you say it. You're not like your mission you're attached to, but you can still form so much of the actual narrative around your company.
I also think there's this weird balance. Plin and I were talking about it back in 2016 or 2017. I invested in 2 companies that now are like pretty well-known AI companies. And I was like, I don't remember them pitching me AI. Like what? And so I went back and I looked at the seed decks, and it was like big data, right? And so like founders have to find this balance between like the narrative changed. So one of the companies literally now is company name .ai, like genius, right? He did $100 million in revenue, like very real business. And he understood like what we're doing actually does, tangentially relate to this stuff. And so like, this is what investors want to see. This is what companies or customers want to see. And so like they position themselves correctly there. But then I'll talk to a lot of other founders and they're like, not in this case, in terms of this pitch, but like we're an AI company. And you're like, so what do you do? And you're like, we use the internet. Like, all right. Right. So
well,
like, it's like
we're
when
a
to
CRM,
use it and when
I'm like,
not
okay,
to.
you're a CRM enabled by AI, but you're a CRM, not an AI company. Like, come
It's
on.
just knowing when's the right time to kind of like lean into the narratives and trends, and then when's the right time to maybe avoid it. And it's like a counter signal.
And I gotta say, like from the reporter perspective, when there's like a cycle of AI, remember when everybody was like pivoting to video? That was the thing. But like when you get all these pitches and a lot of it is riffraff, that you might miss like the really good ones because everybody's describing themselves as an AI company. Whereas if you just change
You want to be differentiated, which often means being specific. I think founders are so scared of it because they want to be like abstracted and high level and strategic, but actually, to your point, especially a reporter receiving so many
They're
pitches.
trying to appeal to as many investors as possible, but instead you should do the opposite. Yeah. You should just appeal to the right investors.
Yes,
and so actually you want to kick away like the wrong investors, and the specificity is like a magnet that attracts the right people.
So true. Next founder up. Hey, what's your name?
Dominic Smith,
Dominic.
founder and
Nice
CEO
to
of
meet you.
Visionbrew. That's me.
Are you ready to give us your pitch and hear some feedback?
Yes, I'm
Dominic,
ready.
tell us. You have a minute. What are you building?
Okay, so I'm building a camera app that records your body motions, then uses that data to animate 3D avatars in augmented reality. So the plan is to provide walking and onboarding for properties that could benefit from a human presence. So imagine walking into an Airbnb, an avatar shows up and shows you around, helps you get set up with Wi-Fi, and can answer any questions you may have. Or imagine walking into your favorite store and an avatar can show you around, help you try out clothes and things of that nature. And so the app is already built. It's available in the App Store. I'm a software engineer. I built it myself and currently raising a pre-seed at the moment.
Well done.
You will raise $1 gazillion if you just create an avatar that walks around CVS with me and opens up all
Oh my goodness.
plexiglass
That is
things.
such a good idea. Wait.
Like I literally walk in the store, I just immediately like, hey, come on, let's go. We're gonna walk around the store together, right?
I'm realizing that has very little to do with what he's actually building, but it's such a good idea that we should start a different startup.
CVS person shopping.
The avatar can't open it, but like, how do you get the projection like in person? So in the Airbnb, when you walk in, do you have to install technology in the Airbnb?
Yeah, so it's a mobile app. I actually have it. If y'all want
Hard to show, but
Hard to
also
show? Okay.
great for you to be able to describe it using your words. That's part of the vision.
Okay.
So tell us about
Yeah,
it.
so the app itself, it just records all your points in your body and then replays it in an avatar. So all you need is your phone, and then you just watch it, and it can actually guide you through a space because it records specific points in the real world as well.
And why is that needed in a thing like Airbnb? Because most people are like, where is like the router in case the Wi-Fi goes out? Like things like that or something else?
Yeah. So for example, I actually run a side business as well. So I have spaces that I rent out to people by the hour. And so I host people for a lot of photo shoots and video shoots. And so I have 4 spaces that I manage. And one of the problems that I run into is that people ask me the same question over and over again. And I even have a frequently asked question section as well. And I still get asked those questions. And I think one of the biggest things is that people just really like to have someone that they can ask questions to, like feel like they're being hosted. And so, now that I've expanded to 4 spaces, it's really hard for me to be there and answer all those questions for people.
That's cool. And can it be integrated into something else? Like I see Airbnb could integrate it into their platform. Is there like other things like that?
Potentially, yeah. So the data that is being collected is the same data that, for example, Pixar uses for their motion, for their animations and things of that.
What are you doing with the data?
The data is just being used to animate the avatars. So I guess data is kind of a scary.
Yeah, but I'm thinking like, could there be another use case for it beyond?
Oh, yeah, I guess so, potentially.
That's the thing that I'm falling into is like, I think that from a technology and UX perspective, it makes sense of like seeing the avatar and, I think you and Pincast should, I don't know if you heard that pitch, but like audio in the world and, kind of avatars in the world. But the challenge that I'm, having is where do I think that's like super going to engage me, super, be monetizable. And I think your use cases make total sense. Your side business makes total sense, but they're not killer apps, right? So if we think about this in the terms of like, whenever a platform launches, whether it's a video game console, whether it's Facebook, there's always that killer app, Farmville, poking on Facebook. I don't know. I don't know if that was the actual killer app of Facebook, but the point being, I want to feel like, oh, there's this one interaction that I'm going to go back all the time for. I'm going to be looking for this to exist when I do X, right? I want this to exist when I do X. And that's the thing I'm not sure this is maybe my prompt to say that's part of the pitch problem, but I also think maybe that's the thing to discover a little bit is other adjacent use cases that utilize the technology well, because I think it's totally cool for the technology to be able to do all of these things. But what's the one thing that's going to make it just so attractive for everyone to download the app, to make their own? I'm not hearing that quite yet.
And just so I'm clear, I basically hold my phone and it's like got a camera in the app, and then the hologram or avatar or whatever is like guiding me based on what I see through the camera. So like if I'm walking through the Airbnb, I'm like holding my phone up like this and it's guiding me where to go. Got it.
So it just shows up right there and it replays whatever emotions were captured beforehand.
Yeah. But if I'm the Airbnb host, I can go in, record whatever I want, and then the next person comes in and they ask, and it's me on the screen or it's them?
It's your avatar.
It's my avatar as the Airbnb host is on the screen.
What does
for you.
avatar mean in your case? Like when you say avatar, is it him, a digital version of him? Is it a polygon representation of an avatar? Is it?
It's a polygon representation.
And does it look like him or does it look like a character?
So I actually have an avatar creator in the app as well.
Okay.
So however you would decide to make the avatar.
So he could be a dog.
It's a person. Just
it's
people.
only a person. Okay.
Yeah. No
It's
animals
about you
yet.
particularly, Pump.
Yeah.
Like, and then he can design. He could have like a Bitcoin shirt.
Yeah. So I'm using this API called Ready Player Me. So they have an avatar creator that I've inserted into the.
See, this is where I want you to take your pitch a little bit. Is like, what could he get excited about, or what could any investor get excited about? Of like, he's starting to imagine it, right? So he's going, okay, like, what do I see exactly? And if you can describe that and go, well, imagine, and you have this a little bit in your use cases, but again, they're not that strong for everybody, right? Of like, I don't run my own.
I actually did think that would be a good use case for you to be able to go in CVS and be able to open up the cabinets. So
maybe you could do the unlock almost like with like a NFC
digital,
or something.
Yeah,
do something like that. Yeah. The big thing about CVS, as much as I joke around about that, it's a perfect example of, first of all, the government and corporations making stupid decisions. But on top of that is that's like such an immense pain point. Like if you go to CVS and you watch
But
people
not
walk
just for
around,
the customer, also for the employees.
yeah, the employees are pissed, right? They're like, I don't want to walk all across the store trying to go find people, and then the thing's beeping. Everyone's like, whatever. But like, it's such an immediate pain point that in that moment, I've literally been like, should I pay one of the employees when I walk in like
follow you
$10,
around.
just walk with me, right? Because
I always feel bad when I make them come to a different portion of the store.
I'm like, now toilet paper.
Well, like you press the button, they walk over there, right? And then you're like, all right, well, now I got to go to the other side. And you're just like, can you just come with me, right? Yeah. So like that is such an immense pain point, and like the average person is like annoyed by it. That if you can solve that big of a pain point, now you don't have this like, oh, it would be nice in the Airbnb, right? Instead, it's like if you solve that thing, like. Polina's in a group, the Upper East Side Moms.
Okay, I'm not. The moms are there. I just
like
observe.
Something like that would go like viral in those communities. Like, oh my God, there's this thing. You don't have to wait for the employees, but like, you know what I mean? You can just like see, hey, if it works, it would take off. Now, how does it work from a technical standpoint? What you'd have to figure all that out. But like, that's like a very clear, okay, if you can build this type of product to solve this pain point, there's value.
Because when you're talking, like, I agree with you, but I also disagree because that's like a very New York problem. Like,
have you looked at the country?
No, the country
They're doing that
doesn't-
shit everywhere.
No. They're not locking things in Atlanta. So my thing is,
We should get political on this stage.
my thing is like, what if, the items that you have to get somebody to unlock it, but it's like usually embarrassing items, that could work well there. It's not just like your toothbrush.
Yeah.
One more piece of feedback for you. I wonder if the technology piece or the like creator piece here, sorry, I'm leaning, is more of your pitch or more interesting. I don't know. But like, I'm realizing as you're talking about all of this, that there's like the creators or the avatar makers version, I don't know what to call this person, the host, right? So like CVS or the Airbnb host. And now I'm realizing I don't know of other tools that let me build something like this. And so that's the other portion of your pitch is like, we make it so easy. You stick your phone on a tripod and you walk around and suddenly you can craft this guided tour and experience. And that's underrated as part of the story. So think about also that portion of it as being a bigger part of the pitch.
Okay.
I like it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good
Yeah,
stuff.
appreciate the feedback. Thank you.
I can't believe you don't think that other big cities have
they don't.
things locked down.
No, and like, no.
I also think this is like a problem we're going away from rather than it's not growing anymore. It was San Francisco, but all the AI people are back in San Francisco. No? What are you going to say?
I was going to
Polina
say,
asked me not to get political today.
I was going to interject with an observation.
Yes.
I'm sitting here in my chair and I look over and you're giving some really good feedback and then you have a calculator on your watch. Have you seen this?
It's one of
This
the
is
classic
amazing.
Casios. One of the...
He has like buttons on the thing.
I cannot recommend it enough.
You've never seen one?
Well, not recently.
I actually did not use the calculator portion
This
of
is
this for like
amazing.
the first year. And then I did a few times. And now I'm like, oh, do I want to pull out my phone and go to the calculator app?
you use
You
it.
can actually use it as a
Oh my
calculator.
God.
It's fantastic. It's like, what's the MoMA music, the store, the MoMA store in Soho. It's like $30, $40. Check it out. Highly recommend. All right, next founder up. What's your name?
Julian Norton.
Julian, tell us. You have. Wait, are you ready? You're gonna have a minute here in a second. You feeling ready for your pitch and to receive some
Stretches.
feedback?
Yeah, I'm ready.
All right, you have a minute. Go ahead, tell us what you're building.
So